Welcome to the TruGolf Academy. You've joined me, Jon Watts, and today's video is all going to be about playing a bunker shot from wet sand. So it's a question I've got via social media about the differences I'd make when the sand is wet. So we're still in winter time. This is January in the UK. It has rained overnight. In fact, it's rained pretty much every night. And we have got quite wet sand here. So it's heavier. Now, the first thing I would look and do is, yes, the sand is heavier, yes, it's a little bit more compact, but is there still sand underneath the golf ball? Of course, the best way to judge that is by wiggling your feet into the sand. So you can do some of it visually, some of it perhaps by wiggling your feet into the sand, which you're allowed to do as long as you're setting up to the ball. You're not allowed to test what the sand's like nowhere near the golf ball, but as long as I'm getting set up to the ball, wiggling my feet into the sand, I can start to judge how much is underneath me. So although this sand is very wet, I still feel there's enough sand underneath me to play this shot as normal. And really, I guess this is quite a short video. The only main difference I'm going to make in wet sand is actually a little bit more commitment, a little bit more speed. So it's the entry speed of the club we're talking about there. We know that the sand slows the club down, and when the sand is heavier, dense sand, it's going to be slowing the club down more. So what we actually need is a little bit more commitment. So rather than that just being, I'm going to hit it harder, I'm going to use my arms more, I would just make a slightly longer movement and making sure that however far I go back, I go through equally as long. So I've got around just under a 20-yard bunker shot here. And what I'm going to be trying to do is make a relatively full swing at it, so up to sort of chest height, and a good up to chest height on the way through, making sure I really commit to accelerating into the sand, not decelerating. So if we can always make sure the follow through is as long or longer than the backswing, we know there is some acceleration. It's not going to be hand speed, it's going to be body. I wouldn't change the contact point, so my target line is on this line here that you guys will be seeing from the downline camera. My entry point that I'm aiming for is still around 2 inches behind the golf ball. That doesn't really alter. So I'm still looking for 2 inches. I'd still keep the ball position the same. And I would, and we'll talk about club face position in a minute, but I would, on this particular shot, it's 20 yards, just under 20 yards. It's downhill, it's a little downwind. I'm going to actually be opening this club face a little bit. But if there was less sand, that's when I may play in the club face a little bit squarer. So I feel there's enough sand for me to still go ahead and open the club face. I'm still going to be setting that pressure, really favouring my lead side. My hands are more level. The only thing I'm trying to do, because it's wet sand, is make sure there's a little bit more commitment, i.e. this follow through length. I'm not stopping and leaving the club in the sand. Let me see if I can give one or two a go. So weight forwards, pressure all on that lead leg. I'm going to touch the sand here just for demonstrating purposes, but I never want that club to be leaning forwards. So I'm getting that club pointing more at my belly button, that I've talked about before in bunker videos. Because it's wet sand, I'm just going to make sure I commit to a slightly longer swing through. Straight over my GoPro, which I'm glad about, rather than hitting it. And it's rolled up there to about 5 feet. Pretty good contact point. Was it perfect? It was close. I was aiming for 2 inches. I got about 2.5. As long as we are accelerating and we're using the club correctly, I feel that you can actually get away with in a bunker anywhere between 1 and 5 inches. So the elite golfers are varying how much sand they're taking depending on, do they want a high shot that releases more, do they want a low shot? You know, they're looking at that style of shot, and they're actually thinking about how much sand they're going to be taking in the bunker. For all of us really, on standard shots, we're looking for 2 inches, and we're happy to get somewhere near that figure. So let me try and hit one more. So nothing changes. Ball is forwards in my stance, weight is forwards, handle's more level. Because it's wet sand, I'm just going to commit to it and make sure I get a slightly longer swing through. That one's going to be a little bit better, I think. pretty similar. Ran out there exactly side by side. It stopped a little bit sooner than I thought it would, but again out there to around 5 feet short of the flag. Contact point was really good. What you'll have seen, especially from this angle, is I committed to the shot, and it's a nice long follow through position, not stopping and leaving the club in the bunker. Now, sometimes when it is wet sand, we can actually get to a point where there is less sand in the bunker. It's almost compacted the sand down, and that's when you wiggle your feet and you don't feel like you move. I've got to dig some of this out to really get there. So now I'm starting to get to a bare lie. Now this is how I'd play a bare lie, and I have done a video on this before. I would actually have the club face square rather than open, because if I'm opening the club face, it's increasing the bounce. So I'm going to play the club face straighter. I'm going to try and just cock my wrists a little bit sooner, so the club is working more up and down on more of a V-shaped swing rather than a wider swing. And because there is less sand, I'm going to have a little less speed. Okay, so less sand, less speed. When there's more sand, lots of sand under the ball, especially wet sand, we're going for more commitment. So yes, this is still wet, but I've taken this sand away as if the water sort of washed the sand away, and we're getting down to a bare lie where there's less underneath the golf ball. I may just chicken out and go a little bit left of my GoPro here, because this is going to be a lower flight. It's lower because the club face is square, and it's because I'm going to be generating less speed as there's less sand. Less speed is going to mean less spin. So the more speed we put into it and the more spin we generate, the more height we generate. So I'm going to go just a little left of my GoPro here. Exactly the same contact point, exactly the same pressure on this left side, square club face, and I'm just going to try and cock my wrists a little sooner, and because there's less sand, less speed. There we go. It's run out to exactly the same distance, but it landed short of the other balls and released more, which is exactly what I'd expect to see. What you'll have seen from this angle is, of course, a shorter swing, less speed, but that's purely because we're talking about actually there being less sand, as if the water's washed that sand away. I hope that really helps you next time you're out on the golf course in wet bunkers. If you're playing golf in the UK right now, you're going to experience a lot of this. So there's the two methods there. You've got to judge whether there's enough sand underneath you first of all. Do that by wiggling your feet into it. If there is enough sand, play it as normal, but more speed, more commitment, because of wet sand slowing the club down more. The only changes we're really making, if there's not enough sand there, is playing it very much like a bare lie, where it's an earlier wrist cock. Okay, so we're hitting effectively a lower ball flight, and we're allowing for that. If that video did help, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the channel as well. It's the best way to show your commitment. It's free. There's videos every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 5:30, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.